1 minute before the meeting start, but I don't see a chair. Welcome, Miss Rebecca. This is your first meeting as well.
Yes, it is. Thank you. I
You're
see
welcome.
a familiar face. That makes me very happy.
Oh my God, Ann, it's my first meeting too. Hi.
Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Furnace. I forgot about you.
Oh my God, that's so cool. Thank you.
It's great to see you.
Same here. Oh my gosh, this is so cool.
Hello, Mr. Scott.
Good evening. How are you?
Wonderful. And you? Do you have a presentation?
I do.
Okay, you should be able to share tonight. Okay.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you. It's now 6 o'clock, Mr. Johnson.
Okay, we'll give 2 more minutes.
Mr. Ali, I think this is your first meeting too, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, I think I owe you some applications.
Yes, I think you do. Mr. Langlois, good to see you.
Hey everyone, how y'all doing?
Doing well. We're doing well. You do have a quorum.
All right. I'm gonna give it like just a few more minutes, just in case it being the first meeting, give people time to kind of come in, so we're not just rushing to start. In case there's a few more people that can join,
Okay.
and then we'll go ahead and get started.
I think we have 4 new members.
Four new total, or 4 on the meeting already?
I think it's 4 new total. They're all here on time.
Nice.
I like that.
I'm a fan of that too.
Me too.
Hi, everybody. While we're waiting, and to that effect of what you just said, I want to keep a good track record. If we have to be absent for a meeting and we know in advance, I think I asked what the process was, and I sent an email out, but I don't think I received any responses, so I'm not sure if I did it correctly. What is the process if you know you're going to have to be out?
Ms. Furnace, to whom did you send the email? Do you remember?
I thought I responded.
You may have. I know you told me what to do, Ms. Black. I know that. But I think I sent the email out to the entire group.
Yeah, because I didn't get anything, but let me go check my spam. Sometimes that happens.
Oh yeah. Okay. How do you pronounce your last name, Leah?
Eford.
Eford. Okay.
You see. If you replied to anyone, I should have got it, but oh no, I don't have anything from you. I'm sorry about that. But and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but would the process not be just to email you and Carl and me just to let us know that there needs to be an excused absence? Okay.
Yeah,
It's pretty
that'd be fine.
straightforward.
Yeah. Yeah, if you just email us, we'll just make a note of it. Basically how it works, and Mr. Johnson, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we basically just keep a track because the city council does get kind of, reports on our attendance and everything like that. Yeah, it just helps them as they're reviewing it to see which ones were like, okay, this person is actually, aware and let people know versus like people who just don't show up at all. And so it just keeps a track of that. And then we also make a note of it in our minutes. Usually there'll be like, absences, confirmed or approved absences or whatever. So even if you don't get a response from us for whatever reason, then when we review the minutes, if you notice that, there should be marked, excused or not, just let us know then as well.
Okay, and I'll resend that email. Thank you.
Not a problem.
And for an excused absence, the notice should be 48 hours before the meeting begins. Is that correct, Juliet?
That is correct. Ms. Furness, I just forwarded the email over to Leo.
Thank you. So I only replied to you.
No, it was it was someone else I thought was the secretary that was on that email that you sent out. So
Oh,
and I
okay.
think Brian was on it as well.
Okay. Thank you so much.
It's 6:06. Are we going to start?
Yeah, we'll go ahead. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And so we'll start off. We'll do the roll in a second. I just want to kind of take a minute to thank everyone. I hope everyone had a great summer. Welcome our new members. Welcome back our old members. I hope everyone's had a good few months and is looking forward to another year of an exciting Citizens Advisory Committee. It'll be a good year, hopefully. I'm going to ask Leah if she'll do the roll call.
Hey everyone. So especially if you're new, please correct me if I'm mispronouncing your name. As you can tell, have kind of a weird last name, so I'm very sensitive to other people. So we have Ahmed Ali, and just say here if you're present.
Here.
Perfect. Lavon Barnes, let's see him. Robert Brown.
Here.
Rachel Eberhard.
Here.
I myself am present. Ms. Furness, can you pronounce your first name for me? I don't want to.
That's okay. Rishaki.
Oh, okay. So it's Publix. Okay, perfect. Rishaki Furness here.
Yeah.
Donald Hughes. Okay. Amy Jones.
Here.
Brian Langloss.
Here.
And Rebeck. How do you pronounce your last name?
I'm here and it's Rebeck.
Rebeck. Perfect. Richard LeBennett.
Present, I'm here.
Okay. Seth Candle.
Here.
And Carl Newman. Okay. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Leah. So as we're starting a new kind of year in session, and this is my first meeting now as the chair. I thought I'd take a few seconds to just kind of, what am I hoping to kind of do as the kind of chair of this committee and where I want to take things. And really, I can summarize that by kind of continuing a lot of the work Lavon started and really kind of, I was really happy as chair when he was chair. When I first came into this council, it felt like a lot of the meetings were just kind of constantly like getting the same slideshows over and over again of like what the 4 grants were. And so, as he took over the chair, he was really, pushed for kind of moving past that, kind of, getting us more involved in the community and strengthening those ties. And I'd really like to kind of continue that work. I'm hoping over the next few months we'll be able to bring in, some other agencies, things like that, to kind of talk about what they're doing, whether it's, with homeless issues in the Triangle or Durham, whether it's, I know DHA is supposed to be talking today, whether it's other updates on, affordable housing, changes going on, or even just other, there's other committees working for Durham and the county that kind of touch on a lot of things that we touch on as well. And so really just kind of trying to build that kind of crosstalk between all these groups. And so we have a better awareness and are more engaged. And then I'd also like to kind of work to kind of some of the core stuff we should do is, really making sure we're involved in the grants and reviewing the grants that actually go out and assisting in that. And so I think it'd be great if we get more involved in that as well. And so those are kind of the broad strokes of what I'm hoping to accomplish over the next year or so as the chair. And to that end, one, if there's anything or any group you'd like to talk here or see represented, please feel free to reach out to me, anyone else on the committee, and we'll see what we can do to make that happen. And two, if there's any ideas you have or things you would like to see as well, I'm also open to that, and I actually would encourage that and would love, that engagement. And so that's kind of where I'm at in kind of terms of what I see going forward and what I would like to do. And so hopefully that's good with everyone, and no complaints about that. The other thing I would like to do, as this is, the start of a new session, new year, and we do have some new members, is I thought it'd be great, everyone just kind of go around one at a time, introduce themselves, maybe a little bit about you, why you're interested in being on the committee, what you do, whatever you feel is like kind of relevant for people to know about you, I guess. So, starting with me, my name's Brian Langloss, obviously. I've been in Durham now about 10 years. I'm chemist by training, but kind of left research because I was much more interested in kind of, policy and social and ethical context of science. And so I've moved out of research into that. While doing that is how I kind of ended up on this committee a few years ago, looking for opportunities to really kind of engage with the local community and things like that and help out where I could. And so I've now been on this committee for, I want to say 4 years, originally just as a member, then as a vice chair, and now as the chair. So hopefully I won't let you all down. And then I guess I'll have Leah, if you want to go next, and then anyone from the body as a whole, feel free to jump in.
Sure, happy to. Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Eford. I am the newly elected secretary of this body. My term started last year, so I've been on the committee for a year. I currently work for UNC Chapel Hill as a research specialist in the SHEPS. I'm so sorry. The SHEPS Center for Health Services Research. I work in their program on aging, disability, and long-term care, primarily with folks who live in assisted living. And I am really interested and devoted to community service. I'm a social worker by training and by practice. And I've lived in Durham since 2018 when I moved here for grad school, but I've been in the Triangle since 2013. And is it okay if we just popcorn, Brian, like around how we have to do in Zoom now? Okay, cool. So I see on my screen, Mr. Brown.
Hello, I'm Robert Brown. I'm a resident of Durham, have lived here I moved back to Durham in 1969 when my dad did a tour in the Air Force. Migrated to Minnesota, moved back again in the late 80s. I did 11 years with the County of Durham as a program manager for transportation, sat on the local transportation advisory committee. Was a transportation manager for the County of Durham for a period of time, worked for 3 or 4 different county managers. I wrote grants, transportation grants, and I have a keen interest in my community. The reason I'm joining the board is because of that. We don't even know where to start. There's just so much stuff in the news and so much is going on that, it's really outside, I think, of housing. That all, it all starts with just basically where people live and jobs and that sort of thing. So I have a keen interest in working with this board for a long time, and a long term rather, in a long time. I just have worked at the Department of Social Services for a number of years, did social work. So I've done a lot of things, and today I work for Lenovo as a global commodity manager. So I've worked in IT now for a period of 20 years, but my roots are in helping people, trying to make things happen, and just using that skill set to better understand what where our government's headed and that sort of thing. So I know I spoke a lot, there's a lot packed in there, but there's a lot here.
Thank you. It's good to have you with us.
I can go next. My name is Ahmed Ali. I grew up here in Durham, went to NC State, and then moved out to New York, where I began my career in nonprofit education and stayed there for about 6 years. Every time I'd come back home, it kept looking a little different, a little more different. And then I sort of moved back here in 2020 and realized, soon enough, we're not even going to be able to recognize Durham. And so that's good or bad, but I'm excited to be a part of this board and hoping we can make sure that everybody's sort of a part of this change that's happening to our great cities. So, and next on my screen, I see Richard.
Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Bennett. This is my second year on the committee. I'll be honest, last year I was mostly just listening in and absorbing a lot of information, kind of getting a feel for what we do and how I can best impact. So I'm happy to be back for a second year and intend to be a little bit more vocal, more active as I can be. Professionally, I just someone mentioned Lenovo. I used to work at Lenovo. I was employed there for 18 years. I just recently moved over to Meta. So I work for Meta now. I work remotely from home. And I also own some real estate in Durham, and I'm active in the community. I've been here in North Carolina and Durham since 2007. So I've grown up and seen the change and want to participate and hopefully be a voice for everyone in our city here on this committee, and happy to be here. Thank you all. Next on my screen is Miss Furness.
Hi, everybody. You already know I'm vocal. So this is obviously my first meeting. This is actually my second board, and I know a couple people that worked for Lenovo. Leah, you mentioned that you work with like assisted living. My mother's in an assisted living facility in Durham, so that was very intriguing to me. I served on a board, Girls on the Run of the Triangle, and that's actually where I know Ann from, my time serving on the board. And I wanted to speak to you, Richard, something you said, something I plan to do this time around is kind of sit back for at least the first couple months and figure out, where I would be utilized most effectively on this board. I am a worker bee, so I like to kind of jump in there and just get going, but want to be most effective for this board. So I made a faith move here to North Carolina from Detroit, Michigan in 2011. When I first moved, I was in Raleigh. When maybe a year after I moved, my now husband was going to school at NCCU to get his master's. He worked for DPR. I worked in Durham, and we always hung out in Durham. So as soon as my son graduated, we moved to Durham. So we were in an apartment, and we just recently purchased a home 2 years ago here in Durham. I am very much just interested in giving back to the community, getting to know the community. I actually just joined my HOA's board because I'm just all about community. And I keep hearing people say things about Durham changing, natives to Durham. I think it's great. I think change is good. And I want to be a part of that change and hopefully speak for folks that maybe aren't as vocal as myself, that don't always take the opportunity to speak up for themselves. Professionally, I work at LabCorp. I'm in clinical research. I'm a project manager for clinical trials at LabCorp. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you. And I'm excited to be here.
We'll go with.
Sorry. Oh, go ahead. You got it. Okay.
I was gonna say we'll go with. Looks like Amy, you are the next one on my screen that hasn't gone yet.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Jones. I've been on this committee since last fall, so I'm fairly new on the committee as well. I have been in Durham about 8 years. I currently live in Lakewood, but prior to that, I lived downtown and then in East Durham. I am the executive director of Porch Durham, which is a food security nonprofit locally. And so I would say, food security is kind of like the issue that's closest to my heart, but obviously people who are experiencing food insecurity or are vulnerable to it are also probably experiencing a lot of other issues, whether it's related to affordable childcare or transportation, but certainly affordable housing is an issue that tends to go along with food insecurity. We also, our organization partners very closely with a lot of the DHA properties. Most specifically, we partner with Medulla Terrace, and I'm probably over there at least once a week hanging out with Ashley Kennedy. And figuring out how we can support the residents there, both with food, but also, with just presence and encouragement and things. And I was even our organization, the big $40 million ask from HUD. Porch was one of the organizations that was part of the people plan for that. So we are connected in the housing world as well. So that's kind of my connection and why I joined. And I will pass it to Rachel.
Thanks, Amy. I'm Rachel Eberhard. I've been on this committee since I think 2020 now, which is incredible that it's been 2 years already. So my background is in housing and community development. I've been in the Triangle since 2014. Kind of like Leah, I came down here for a grad program, and I'm currently a real estate developer with CASA. And for those of you who aren't familiar with CASA, we develop affordable housing units for people who are homeless or at risk. And so we operate kind of throughout the Triangle. I live in Durham. We have a little over 200 units, I believe, in Durham. But prior to landing at CASA, I was in the tax credit space. So I worked for a tax credit syndicator. I was on the financing side. So I kind of bring a more traditional affordable housing experience to this group. I've been in Durham since 2018. I live in Trinity Park, right near Northgate Mall, which is in the news right now. They have a rezoning meeting coming up this week. So yeah, I feel like both personally and professionally, I'm very plugged in to kind of the housing space. I guess on my personal side, I have 3 stepkids that are all in DPS schools right now. So 2 are getting ready to start next week. 1 started last month. So they're keeping us plenty busy. So it's nice to see some new faces, and also looking forward to continuing to serve with those of you who have been around for a couple of years. And I'm going to pass it to Dr. Hosley Hyman.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I am Dr. Monique Hosley Hyman. I am your new city council person. I was sworn in May, but a little bit about me. Actually, I was on this committee prior to that happening. So I have been able to share some work with a lot of you. But honestly, I've been here in Durham since 2006. I have over 30 years of social work, administration, clinical, social work, and then 15 to almost 16 years now in higher ed. So when I moved to North Carolina, I started the social work programs at Shaw University, worked my way up there. I was there for about, I left there in 2018, but had many different positions. I started at the Cape site here in Durham, assistant professor. I was chair, I was special assistant vice president. We had about 9 different presidents at Shaw, and every time we had different presidents, we had different visions. But in the middle of that, I also was very active in Durham. So I know a lot of you from being in the community. Ann and I was on all these different PTA, you name it. And so I always was very active and in the schools and also Durham Social DSS board. I'm actually the vice president, but prior to that, I also was on the mental health board, then the Alliance board. So all the years that I've been in Durham, I've been doing a lot of volunteering behind the scenes. And when this position came up, I literally still can't believe that I got it. I put my name in a hat because I am so used to people having to fight for services within Durham. And I'm usually there helping fight behind the scenes. And I am now here trying to fight in the public, but I'm still going to be who I am, which is my number one thing is fighting for everybody in Durham, all diverse populations. And that's just who I am. I'm so happy to know that right now, the mayor is doing a deep dive into housing, and which is one of our strategic plans. And we're going to be doing that at our retreat. And there's just a lot of things that I'm learning on city council. I'm going to tell you like this, I'm very solution focused and I want things done now. And, and I'm realizing that that is not going to be the case. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try my best to get whatever I can get done. My tenure ends in 23 and I have to decide if I'm going to run. And so that's where I'm at now. While I'm on this, I'm really going to make sure I do my best in trying to make sure that Durham is a place for all people to be able to live. I love Durham. I came here to give my kids a better way. Now they are all, well, one, my baby is a senior at Chapel Hill, getting ready to get out this year. She took all her junk. I was there all day trying to get her junk. You know, they move out and leave the room a mess. I don't understand. But anyway, and my oldest one graduated from UNC Charlotte last year, and she was in admissions council at Strayer and just got a new position at High Point as a academic success coach. So, you know, I'm about volunteering. I'm about getting out there. Mr. Johnson knows, Mr. Scott knows, we've been doing a lot of this already. And I just, you know, I got to learn that it can't happen yesterday, but I'm still not, you know, I'm trying to make it happen. And I don't know, but I'm like, yeah. So anyway, let me shut up and let me popcorn it to Mr. Bonds, because he just came in.
Good evening, council member. Holy Hyman, how are you doing? Good?
I'm good.
Good. And good evening to everybody. I'm sorry I'm not on camera. I'll be on camera in a few. It feels so good to not be the chair right now. I'm just playing. And just be a regular schmegular old member. But welcome to everybody that is new to the board. I see some familiar faces. I see you, Rashaki, over there. You know, a lot of familiar faces. So I have no idea what we're talking about, but I'm assuming how long we've been on the board, that type of deal.
Yeah,
just
general
just an introduction. Yeah.
Introduce
because I didn't make the agenda for the first time in a long time, so I couldn't tell you what's going on. But my name is LeVon Barnes. I'm a Durham Public School teacher. I have been on this board for quite some time now. I've been chair of the board, I think at least the last 4 cycles. And I've gladly given it up to our new chair. I love this. I love serving on this board because of what we do. It's the oldest board that the city has. We know that what we decide here helps change lives. And so I'm glad to serve in any capacity that the chair and the vice chair and executive branch decides. I'm also the representative from this board on the Affordable Housing Implementation Committee. And I'll from time to time report to the board what we are doing when it comes to the bond and the implementation of the bond. So appreciate y'all. And I don't know who to pass it off to, but I'll pass it off to somebody.
Mr.
No
Barnes,
worries.
can I just interrupt? I also want to say that I am also a professor at Central. So at 7:30, I'm going to have to leave because I have class. So let me just, sorry.
Hopefully we won't go that long. You know, I like to keep them short, you know. One of the best things I learned from my predecessor here.
That's right. Keep it brief.
I think Carl, I saw you jump on recently, so I think you might be the only one that hasn't gone yet, but
Yeah, and I'll try to be quick. Sorry, I was somehow joined on webinar, and Leah was kind enough to make me the second Leah so that I could get on as a panelist. This is the start of my third year on this board, so the last year of my first term in the CAC. I have lived in Durham for the last 4 years. I spent 1 year of that time as the general counsel of the Durham Housing Authority, so I'm happy to see my former client, Anthony Scott. I don't work there anymore, which is probably better for my health overall. But I'm still very committed to being involved in affordable housing and in Durham. So looking forward to working with all of you this year. I'm Brian's vice chair, and should ever he be absent, then I'll be running the meeting and keeping it equally short, I promise.
thank you. And Anne let me know that she hadn't gone yet, so I'll let her introduce herself as well.
Hi, I'm super excited to be here. I love seeing all these familiar faces. My name's Anne Rebeck. I've been in Durham since 2003. I am the very proud parent of 2 Durham Public School graduates. My second daughter graduated in 2021. And as Monique referred to, you can learn a lot about leadership if you're an active parent in the Durham Public Schools. So I got very involved through that and organizing with the Durham Association of Educators, shout out to public educators, and also through People's Alliance. I've served on boards over the years. I currently am serving on the Historic Stagville Foundation Board, and I'm really excited to be on this advisory committee. I was a part of, I don't know if I'm going to get the name right. It was called like the City County Neighborhood College. And I think it was the last one that y'all did back in 2019. And it was, we met for 6 times to learn about city, county services. They've done them many times over the years, a great program. I used to call it Neighborhood Nerd College. So I'm just really glad to be able to take some of that learning now and serve on this committee. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Is there anyone that we missed? I should have kept a track of who was going. I see Seth raising his hand. Take it away, Seth.
Good evening. I'm Seth Candle. How I got into this, interested in this is I used to be one of the magistrates for Durham County. And so I've worked very closely with the unhoused population. I ran into housing issues myself at 16, resulting in me dropping out of high school at 17. And joining the Army, which is what brought me to North Carolina. I currently work as an attorney with the North Carolina ABC Commission as a regulator in alcohol law. And I just started my Master's of Public Administration program at UNC School of Government. Thank you. This is an area that hits very close to home for me, given my past experiences, and so I'm really happy to participate. I'm also serving on the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council due to my experience with as a magistrate. But yeah, so just really enjoying what I'm doing and really interested in this subject area and hoping to be able to impact it as much as possible.
Thank you. All right, last call. If there's anyone else on the committee didn't introduce themselves.
I don't know if Mr. Johnson and Miss Black have had the chance.
Yeah, I was gonna
Miss
go to them
Holmes,
next.
yeah.
And then
All the members.
Yeah. So yeah, Mr. Johnson and Ms. Black, if you want to introduce yourselves real quick and what you do for the city.
Super. Thank you. Reginald J. Johnson. I serve as the Director of the Community Development Department for the City of Durham. I'm your chief staff person assigned to staff this committee, and Ms. Holmes and Ms. Black assist me. And we'll have some others joining us as we fill some positions. I've been the Community Development Director since 2011. Been with the city about 19 years. I first moved to Durham in 1989 to attend graduate school, and then left, worked in Washington, and then returned in 99 and been back continuously since 1999. And I'm glad to be here and be of service to you. Juliet?
Good afternoon. My name is Juliet Black. I am the executive assistant to Reginald J. Johnson, and I am the temporary clerk to this board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello all, I'm Terry Porter Holmes, no hyphen, and I have the pleasure of serving as one of the assistant directors for Community Development Department. And I am responsible for the fiscal, planning, and administration side of the house. And hopefully we'll have our teams hired. They'll be coming into this particular committee as well. So welcome aboard to all the new members.
Thank you. And thank you three for holding everything together for us and doing all the heavy lifting that keeps this committee going. I planned on doing our city council member last, but you know, I got beat to that one. So so now that we all know each other, we can you know, have no problems, you know, telling each other how it actually is, and you know, letting each other know our minds and stuff. So you know, I'm a fan of people speaking up and sharing their thoughts and opinions on things. I feel like that's kind of always the best way to learn and figure out things. With that, yeah, I just want to thank you all. Welcome to our new members. Welcome back to our old members. You know, I'm glad to have you all here and looking forward to this. Now to actually dive into the meat and potatoes, our first, you know, official thing is we got to approve our minutes from our last meeting. So if there should be coming up here. There we go. So hopefully everyone had got the email with these, had a chance to either look over them, is comfortable with them. Is there any changes that need to be made? Any concerns, comments, questions about them?
Mr. Chair, I vote to approve the minutes as stated, with barring any grammatical corrections that need to be made.
I second that.
I'll accept that motion in second. So we'll just do a voice vote. All those in favor of the minutes from the last meeting, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Hearing no nays, we'll approve those minutes. Thank you all. Next, we're going to jump over to Anthony Scott. He's a representative from the Durham Housing Authority. He's going to give us an update on all the work they're going on. So, Mr. Scott, thank you for your patience as we got things started and rolling. And I will turn it over to you to introduce yourself and let us know what you guys got going on over there.
Great. Thank you very much. And it's good to see some faces I've seen before and introduction to some of the newer ones. And because of there are some newer ones, I thought it would be good to talk a little bit about DHA high level. One, that we are a housing authority of the city of Durham, but we are not a city agency. I'm often surprised that people don't know or understand that. Our operating dollars for our day-to-day management of our public housing comes from the federal government. It does not come from the city at all. The city has been a partner with us as we have looked to do redevelopment of our public housing communities. but the funding for the ongoing operations and things of that nature still will not come from the city of Durham. I'll mention that we have about 100 employees, and we have a budget of about 38 million or so, closer to 40, I think, actually. And we have about 2,000 public housing and affordable housing units, as well as almost 3,000 housing choice vouchers that have been allocated to us, but we have not put all of those out because the allocation of the vouchers doesn't necessarily match with the availability of spaces for the use of those vouchers. Not to mention, we don't get enough funding to fully support all of the vouchers that have been allocated to us. And I won't go into a lot of the details with that, but if you'd like, we can come back and talk about that later. Or if you got pertinent questions, I can certainly jump into those. And just a little background, one great conversation I had with our newest council member is I don't talk enough about myself. So I have been in the community development field for 30 years now. And this is my third housing authority. Before coming to Durham, I was at Baltimore City Housing Authority as a deputy executive director. And prior to that, I was the executive director / CEO for the Richmond Housing Authority. So this is something that has always been part of my DNA. The only thing I've ever done is try to improve upon communities. And half of my career specifically has been spent with housing authorities. Prior to that, I was on the West Coast where I worked for 10 years with a nonprofit group in what is commonly called South Central Los Angeles. So this is all I've ever known. This work is all I've ever wanted to do. And I really can appreciate more than ever the dedication that the city of Durham has. That's both the community, the administration, and it's really unique that you have a partnership where the city is coming together, really trying to do something with our residents. That you just don't see it in a lot of cities. So with that, I'm going to jump into where we are with our redevelopment efforts so that you all can get an update. And some of this you've heard before, a lot of it has not changed dramatically, but I can just give you an update of exactly where we are these days. Taking a little bit longer. Okay, there we go. Can you all see the presentation?
Yep.
Great. So I wanted to set a little bit of the stage. So back in 2016, when I first came here in thinking about the redevelopment of our public housing communities, the one thing that was clear, rehabbing our public housing communities would not solve the many challenges that we face as a housing authority for the long haul. If we were doing renovation of our units, we likely would not garner enough money to properly do the renovation work. And so we'd be right back at this point again, another 10, 15 years. And that's been the pattern with housing authorities is they get pockets of money, they go in, they try to do the renovation work, but they're not able to do enough. And so you can do plumbing, but maybe not electrical, or electrical, maybe not plumbing. You can do the outside, but maybe not thoroughly on the inside. Those sorts of things, because historically, housing authorities have been underfunded in both their ongoing operations and also their capital funding, meaning dollars that they receive to do major repairs, like replacing a roof, replacing an outdated electrical system or plumbing system. We're funded in two different pots for that, but both of them have been horribly underfunded. And you might have heard me say before that HUD itself has admitted that there are somewhere in the neighborhood of $70 billion nationally that they have been behind in funding housing authorities. And that number is growing by supposedly $3.4 billion a year. We know that number is significantly higher than that. It's probably closer to $150 billion, just based on what we see as housing authorities across the country when it comes to doing major renovation and or redevelopment of our sites. So in looking at this situation, we knew there were a couple of tools that HUD had out there, but we thought we needed to be strategic and smart about this and not just look at this as one site at a time, but look at this more comprehensively. And that's when we came up with what's called DDNP, DHA's Downtown and Neighborhood Plan. That involves a total of 447 units on 4 different sites, but there are other sites that we have that are not necessarily occupied as well. And so that was included in this, and I'll talk about more of that. It also, in partnership with the city, they asked us to look at 2 sites that they own. One is called Southside 3, you see at the bottom of the screen. And then at the top of the screen is Hunt Street Station, which is the current location of where Mr. Johnson's offices are. We also had reached out and talked with the county about how we could possibly use their land adjacent to our offices. And so I'll explain more of this as we go through. So at the end of the day, when we went through more than a year of planning, that was community meetings that we did over the course of that year, both at the various locations as well as sort of centrally located. The plan that we came up with would be an estimated budget of over 500 million. It would take about 10 years to do, and about 2,500 units of housing, replacing the 447 units of housing. So we'd replace all the existing units, but add about another 2,000 units as well. These units would be mixed income and where possible mixed use. And when I talk about mixed income, that means, again, we're replacing existing public housing units. So that's below 30%. And we would go all the way up to and including market rate units. We break those down to about, I think it was around 40% of the units would be workforce housing, and then about 18 or 20% would be market rate units. And this is important because one of the things that has been really, really clear about public housing is that if you 100% rely on the federal government, you are never assured that you're going to get enough money, and you never know what year you're going to get what amount of money. So literally every year we wait to see what our budget will be because we have no idea what Congress is going to approve for funding of the housing authorities. The one thing that's been great, and this is kind of a sad, I guess, next 4 months for me, is that the subcommittee for Congress that oversees the funding for housing authorities is currently chaired by Congressman Price. And he has done a great job over the last couple of years as he's been chair. And then even prior to that, the prior 2 years, he was essentially the minority leader for the Democratic side when the Republicans controlled the House. And he and Diaz-Balart, which was the chair at the time, got along really well. So over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen our funding slowly get a little better, but not nearly at the levels that it needs to be. This is kind of a snapshot of all of that planning work and what it would look like. So it shows you these 7 different sites and what could be built on those. These were what we used to, one, come up with a clear vision, determine how many units we were going to have an understanding of how we get to the budget that we would have. But we knew that all of these plans would then have to be vetted by an actual development partner. And so for each of these sites, minus the 2 city sites, we would look at bringing in a development partner who would help us in actually building these particular communities. So this is what all that looks like in terms of additional numbers. This shows you our development timeline, the anticipated budget at the time, and the red box represents the housing bond sites at the time that the bond was issued in 2019. So with this, you see all 7 sites, including the 2 sites with the city. You see when we anticipated that we would begin our first phase of work, because each of these sites, with one exception, or 2, I guess, when you look at the 2 city sites, they would have more than one phase associated with it. So we kind of identified when we thought each phase would start in each of these particular sites. You see the number of phases, and then you see 9%. That represents the low-income housing tax credit program, which is the largest single program that helps fund affordable housing in the country. Every state has an allocation that they get for the 9% tax credit. That is the most competitive. We compete with everyone who wants to build in Durham. We compete with them, and only one tax credit will be awarded in Durham in any given year. So it is highly competitive, but we also know there's another tax credit program called the 4%, and that one is non-competitive, but as the numbers indicate, you get about half as much money that comes into the development. And this is essentially free or equity money. So this is money that goes in, helps you keep those units affordable. And for each phase of our developments, as you can see here with the 9% line column, it shows you how many 9% we expected to have versus the number of phases. The next column gives you an idea of what we expected the budget to be for each of these sites. And then the next and last column shows you the number of units as we had anticipated them. So that was in 2019. This is what those same numbers look like today. As you can see, the red minus the box, the red represents where there was a change. And virtually all of these are expected to have some level of change associated with them. When it comes to the timeline, we were largely on track, but for our friends at when we had this little event called COVID-19, and that really pushed us behind for a lot of the start on this. But in some respects, we actually, if you go back to this, we're actually ahead for some of this because Forest Hill Heights, we've gotten a developer for that. Fayette Place, where, as you all have heard, we have a development partner for that currently. And the other three sites, J.J. Henderson actually did get started in 2019, but didn't really start coming out of the ground until 2020. And the East Main Street and the DHA office CRG, we expect both of those to get underway this year and next. So a lot of planning went into this, a lot of hard work around this, and then we had to adjust. And the one reason why I always start with that original one is to make sure that people understand that even what we project today, there will be no guarantee that it's going to be the same. That goes for cost, phases, number of units, and obviously budget. You can see our budget was, I think, around $530 million in 2019, and now it's well over $700 million. And that's a direct result of just regular old inflation, but certainly the kind of inflation that we've been struck with because of COVID-19 and supply chain issues, et cetera. Now I'm going to run you through each of these fairly quickly just to give you a sense of where we are with each of these sites. The very first one was J.J. Henderson. This is the only site in which we are going to actually do renovation. It's a senior development, it's 178 units. It is being renovated as we speak from top to bottom. This is expected to be completed before the end of this year. It was kind of great because we were able to do the renovation work with residents still in place. We vacated some of the units and we also allowed attrition to take place so that we had a rotation of units that were under construction. Once they completed, then people were moved into the new units, they would vacate other units. So that is why this renovation work has taken a little longer, but it has actually caused at least amount of disruption to the existing residents. At the same time, on the same site as the J.J. Henderson development, we also have a new construction building that is there. That's the larger L-shaped building. And that has been named the Joyce, and is named after Joyce T. Nichols, who was the first woman and the first African-American woman to be designated as a physician's assistant. She graduated from Duke's Physician's Assistants program, which ironically is literally right across the street from this new development on the other side of Duke Street. This is showing you a little bit of what the rehab looks like. So you see before shots and after shots of one of our units. So you can see upgrading the appliances, creating better storage, replacing the floors, lighting systems, et cetera, are being upgraded, as well as the HVAC system in each of the units. The old J.J. Henderson had sort of a centralized system. This actually has individual units, which makes it easier to deal with maintenance issues and replacing units so that the entire building doesn't have to get shut down. This is the current state of things for the Joyce. So as you can see, it is quite nearly almost there. It's a 4-story building, and the expected completion date for this will be at the spring of 2023. So it's moving along very nicely. We had a little ceremony that the Joyce family was able to come out, or Joyce, Miss Nichols family, I should say. The Nichols family was able to come out and celebrate getting to the top floor of this development. Next up, we'll talk about Liberty Street Apartments and 519 East Main Street. So this site has been a little frustrating for us because we should have been well underway in construction on 1A that you see at the top right of the screen. But because of COVID, it's been pushed back now a year and a half of what we expected to be our start date. COVID created some problems with the tax credit program, not to mention the fact that it caused a significant increase in cost. And we weren't able to get moving on that quite as quickly as we had hoped, even though the project was literally fully funded and ready to go a year plus ago. But because of the delays, it ended up hurting us financially. But we're happy to say that this site is now about to start work in the next couple of months at the most. Phases 1A and B will be the first out the blocks. Phases 2 and 3 will be next. We expect that phases 2 and 3 will be under construction by the spring of next year. And someone mentioned CNI. Who was that? I forget who it was that mentioned CNI, which stands for Choice Neighborhoods Initiative Grant. It's a $40 million opportunity for funding. That grant will primarily go, majority of it will go towards advancing phases 2 and 3 and possibly 4 on this site and allow us to get to the affordability levels that we'd like to see. In addition to that, there's also going to be dollars going towards what's called the People Plan that was mentioned. And that will be to help support those families on this site over the course of the next 6 to 7 years. And then there's another portion of that grant that would go towards the Fayetteville Street corridor up to and including the Hayti Heritage Center. We hope to hear some very positive news about this grant within the next couple of weeks. And if that is received, we certainly can see a huge shot in the arm to seeing that this development gets going.
Mr. Scott, that was actually me who mentioned the People Plan of the CNI. I'm wondering, with the delays in getting started on phase 1, you said all that work was fully funded. Was that implicated at all with the late start, or it still is fully funded?
Well, it's been funded now thanks to cooperation with the city, Mr. Johnson and his staff, where we were able to essentially add more funding to this first phase. That's why, again, the $40 million we get for this site hopefully will help boost this site as well as make up for those additional dollars that we had to spend on that first phase. And these are renderings of the sites. This would be, and this is an outdated rendering, so it's a little different than this, but gives you a feel for scale of the sites. But this is the first phase, what's called Elizabeth Street Apartments right now. And then second and third phase, this is part of that. This will be the Commerce Street Apartments. Next up, we'll talk about the last 3 phases of the DHA controlled sites. That's Forest Hill Heights, Fayette Place, and the DHA office. We released an RFP in last June to solicit additional development partners for those 3 sites. The first site up here is the DHA office area. So that little building you see down there in the middle, this guy right here, that actually represents the criminal justice building. So our office would be just to the right of that normally, and then on the corner is our parking lot. So what we're looking to do is to build, take down our existing building and build there. But then what we asked the county to do was to allow us to use the land that surrounded the criminal justice site. And that will allow us to come up with a plan that will, and this shows you here what I mean by that. So you see the criminal justice building is the one in the middle. DHA building was next to that originally. We would take that down and we'd literally build sort of around the criminal justice building and replace the parking deck to be able to accommodate the county's needs as well as DHA's units need as well. And what this would do is produce about 258 units on that site and about 42,000 square feet on the Main Street side. The next site is Fayette Place. You might have heard of this one. This is a 20-acre site that's currently vacant. It was the former home of the Fayetteville Street Apartments that was torn down sometime in the early 2000s. And it's been vacant ever since. Our development partner with this, again, going by the work that we did in 2018 and 2017, really, came up with a scheme that would show about 774 units of housing on this site, as well as a 20,000 square foot grocery store. Since that time, we have been working with the community and the developer, and they've changed this dynamic a bit. We haven't yet settled on what the new site plan will look like, but it was based on some of the feedback we received. It would be a reduction in the number of housing units and an increase in the number of commercial retail space. And then lastly is our Forest Hill Heights development. This is probably the most aggressive and dynamic of the three, in that it has over 700 units projected for this site, but it also includes about 70,000 square feet of commercial space, 17,000 square feet of program open space, which you see in that kind of bottom right corner. That's all open. It'll be it's called Tribute Rising. It's a tribute to the Hayti community and the history of Durham, particularly the history of Black Durham, as I like to call it. So you can see here that this is a much higher cost site. This is over $200 million projected for this. They are engaged with the residents that are on that site. I did mention the number of units that are currently on that site. This is a 15-acre site, and it currently has 55 units on it. And we go from those 55 units to well over 700. And this is part of why it was important for us to look at the sites that DHA had in the downtown area collectively, because we can look at ways in which it would make the most sense to try to figure out how do we increase the number of affordable housing units, first and foremost, preserving the number of existing public housing units, but incorporating them into a mixed income and, where possible, a mixed use solution. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about Medulla Terrace. We have begun our planning work on Medulla Terrace. It is our oldest site. It goes back to the early 1950s. It's 35 acres currently. And as you all know, back in 2020, we had a carbon monoxide scare there, and we went through an evacuation to make sure no families could be additionally harmed. And as a result of that, we spent over $10 million in a combination of doing repair work, and then also just to deal with the housing of folks in hotels and transportation and food and everything you can think of around that massive effort to try to make these units as safe as possible. HUD has told us that they want us to get Medulla Terrace out of the public housing inventory. We agreed with that because we were planning to do that anyway, and the timing works out well in terms of when we start the process. I'm not necessarily thrilled about HUD's proposed timeline where they said they want to see this happen in 2 years. That's not realistic. But what we're doing now is going through our planning stages with this. We've engaged our residents for several community meetings that will continue. We have until the end, we have until February of next year to provide HUD with a plan. That plan will give a realistic expectation of what it would take to do the redevelopment of this site. And that includes how we're going to deal with relocation, where we think people can go, and things of that nature. We are not at all accepting this 2-year timeline that HUD just arbitrarily throws out when we have over 300 families on this site. So that is a very, very quick overview of where we are. And I will pause here, and I won't share my screen just in case there are some questions, and I can flip back to a slide very quickly. So is there any particular questions, or I should, I guess, turn it back over to the chair in terms of the questions?
Mr. Scott.
Yes, sir.
It's Robert Brown. Hey, I've been a long-term resident of Durham. Family has lived in that area where Medulla Terrace is in the past. Back in the 50s, some of my family actually lived there. And my concern is, are you putting people back in there and renovating the projects? They're just the projects. I mean, I was wondering if they would be just torn down and we not do anything else in that area. So can you
that is
what the plan is there?
I'm sorry, I cut you off on the last part. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, could you speak to what the plan is there? Because
so that's actually what we're doing right now, is developing our plan for this site. Right. The short answer is we will not be doing renovation for Medulla Terrace. We will be looking to tear down completely and rebuild in that site. And we will include the 10-acre site of Lincoln Apartments as part of that.
Okay.
So we are literally going through that planning process right now. First, we started with getting feedback from our residents, and we're actually going through that process as we speak to determine what that redevelopment might look like on those Medulla Terrace, on that 35 acres of McDougal, plus the other 10 acres that we have at Lincoln Apartments.
Because you've got, a floodplain back there too.
We do.
Right. And redeveloping and spending money in that area with that floodplain, because a lot of that land is in a floodplain. It doesn't make
we are absolutely aware of that 100-year floodplain, or the new 100-year floodplain, actually, because
right.
Originally it was fine, obviously, because the buildings are there. But and you're talking specifically about Lincoln Apartments, just so everyone will know.
Yeah.
So there are some units called Lincoln Apartments that is very close to a creek that runs through there. We cannot build on some of that land because of that. And so those units will in fact come down, and we'll look at ways in which we could use that space, such as green space and open space and things like that.
Well, if I would like to know more about that and stay abreast of what's happening, because as you mentioned, green space and whatever. Back in the 70s, there was a proposal from the city to put a park back there. I'm very familiar with that area, and the homeowners didn't want to park back there because it wasn't conducive to anything that was positive, anything good that was going to happen in that park. So I'd just like to know more about the plans.
Sure.
And be involved.
Sure.
Know more about the plans, because there's just a lot going on back there that's just not good. The elephant in the room is it's just not good. And to spend money thinking that you can change it and make it better is great. I applaud that. But there's a lot back there that's not good.
Agreed, and that's why we are doing an extensive effort of looking at that. And the one thing I'll just say in response to a park, there's a difference between a park and open space associated with a specific development. That means it's controlled, and it's not just sort of open and free to everyone. But we absolutely understand what's going on, not only there on the Lincoln Apartments area, but even more closer, around Bridgeway, over by where that sort of store is, and you kind of go up the hill to TA Grady. There's a whole lot of activity and things going on there as well. So all of that's being considered, and that's why it's important that we start with the residents, because if anybody is going to tell us what is going on there, our residents are going to be able to do that.
Use your eyes as a guide, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I know, Carl, you have a question.
Yeah, Anthony. So I could tell that things had not gone according to the original timeline at Liberty, but I'm sure everybody really understands that. I'm wondering if my memory was that the plan at Liberty was for a kind of phased attrition, so that essentially as people left, they wouldn't be replaced with new residents, and that would allow families at Liberty to kind of move from one building to another building that wasn't going to get redeveloped until later. I'm actually assuming that the delay in construction has probably helped with that, so that basically nobody's really going to have to, people might have to move units, but they'll be able to stay at Liberty until the first set of phase construction is complete. Is that right?
No, that's not right. There are parts of Liberty, like the first phase 1A and B, those units have already been vacated. So the work that goes on there will not affect any existing residents. And then the phase 2 is the next piece. So you see that kind of red dotted line going through the middle. That's sort of separating kind of the first phase of activity and then the second phase of activity. So that unit, the buildings 2A and 3 are going to be the next phase of relocation that we do. And I forget how many units we have that are occupied now. I think it might be 15 or so. And so that's the only families that will be impacted directly for this first phase, for that first half, I'm going to say. Then when you get to the left side, all of the demo that's going to happen will take place all at once. So it'll be the remaining, let me do it this way. So it'll be the remaining units that are Liberty Street Apartments that you see And it will include the former Oldham Towers, which we just call 519 East Main now. It'll include that as well. So the beauty of this is that with the other developments that we have going on, for example, the Joyce, which is a senior building, I don't think I mentioned that, as well as the completion of the renovation of J.J. Henderson, it gives us an opportunity to relocate residents to, seniors who are comfortable in a building like that. We can relocate them there. For the other sites that we have, we also have other partnerships with the county work that's going on. Literally the building across the street from us, we can look at having folks move there, but we'll have to do temporary relocation and or permanent relocation, depending on what the family chooses to do. And then those who are looking at temporary relocation can come back as different phases are completed. There's going to be more families captured on this site, frankly, than was originally planned, because we changed 2A from being a senior to a family building, and it matches with 1A, and then building 3 is going to be more on the senior side.
Yeah, and so my question, which is just I remember hello those many years ago that when we were all out campaigning for the bonds, getting all the questions about, well, what about displacement of the residents, and sort of my understanding of some of the phasing is supposed to be, Oldham doesn't get torn down until there's new units at the new JJ to put the folks who are currently in Oldham at the time it's getting ready to tear down. I thought the plan had been at Liberty that essentially whoever's left at Liberty by the time that 1A is actually built, the last buildings to get torn down will get torn down until the newest building is finished. It sounds like I have that timeline wrong, that those families from Liberty will actually end up somewhere else.
No, this is the beauty of working with HUD, United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, is that the plans that we had that we thought made more sense, HUD says, no, you have to do it a different way. So
that sounds right to me.
So we've had to accommodate the demands of HUD on a lot of what our original plans were, and it continues to get refined and changed. But we think that they have settled on this now. And so what will happen is that as we build, 1, 2, and 3, it gives us more opportunity to move some of the families over. They actually changed the bedroom sizes, for example. We were doing more 2s, we're now doing more 3s to match some of the units that are existing for the Liberty Street apartments. And one thing I'll just mention for everyone else who doesn't have the benefit is that for any of this work that we're doing, any time we touch a public housing site, we are required to provide a relocation plan that HUD has to approve. So we can't sort of willy-nilly going about trying to tear buildings down and moving people without having first a HUD approved plan as to where people are going to be and when they're going to be there. So that is something that we always like to emphasize, because people think, oh, the housing authority is going to just do what they want to do with people. That's not the case. And that's something that we cannot do even if we wanted to, not that I would, but that's something we can't do no matter what.
Do they provide adequate funding for you to do that? And then if they're, if the timeline is longer, are they providing, you what you need to do your job? I mean, the funding?
So let's be real clear. HUD is not providing funding to do anything. They've sort of given us a tool called RAD that allows us to do some things with the redevelopment of our public housing that we can't do without it. But HUD doesn't provide any funding to do anything. The city of Durham has been a key funding partner for us. They have actually funded the relocation for this site. But in general, you have to understand that all of the work that we're doing has to be built into the project budget. So relocation will be built into the project budget. It's not something that we're going to get a separate allocation of money from HUD for. It just doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. There was a small glimmer of hope with the Build Back Better Act. There was actually about $300 billion, I think it was, that was in that bill that would go towards housing authorities. But of course, we all know what happened to Build Back Better.
Well, does the Department of Social Services work with you when you are when you're trying to migrate people and different living situations. I just wondered, as a looking at the big picture, people that, need a better jobs, more training, that sort of thing to help them get out of public housing. Maybe that's a conversation for another day. But I just wondered how that may help with how does it help you, and if they're actually helping to make that happen as you work to revamp the housing. I think you've done a great job. I've watched you on television for the last couple of years, and I think you're just doing a lot. But I wonder a lot about the funding, so maybe we could talk about that another time.
Yeah, I'll just say this. One of the burdens that we get is that people often look at the housing authority and they want us to try to solve all of the sort of ills that goes with the population that we serve.
Right.
And, I have to remind folks, we're housers, we're not social workers, we're not, counselors. And we do stress and try to expand our partnerships with those that do. We certainly work with DSS and Department of Health and things like that. But it is not part of what we get funded for. Now, years ago, housing authorities did actually used to get funding that would help them with these kinds of things, but not so much anymore. And so one thing I will say about relocation, however, is that we do bring in a third-party relocation company who actually works with those families on a one-on-one basis. They first assess what their needs are, in terms of bedroom sizes, looking at their family composition. If it's a family, for example, that really wants to be in the same community because of schools or because of doctors or what have you, then they try to work with them on finding housing that will be able to accommodate what their needs are. So it is a real tough issue to kind of tackle. And then when it comes to a lot of our social service agencies, the partnerships that we have, we try to stress those. We do have a small resident services staff. It's really literally like 5 people. And we have a couple of programs that HUD does fund. One is called Family Self-Sufficiency, which is geared towards helping families who are looking to set goals and then ultimately move out of public housing. Or sometimes the goals aren't even moving out of public housing, or it might be trying to get a job, trying to get a car, things like that. There's another program we have called Ross, and it focuses primarily on the senior population and making sure they have assistance that they need. And then more recently, we got a $2.3 million grant called Jobs Plus. It's a 4-year grant only for Medulla Terrace that is focused on encouraging residents to get a job. And if they get a job, their rent doesn't go up like it normally would. All of our rents are income-based. So you pay 30% of your adjusted income towards your rent. So if you get a job, then your rent's gonna go up accordingly. If you lose your job, your rent goes down accordingly. With Jobs Plus, it encourages residents to get a job, and it doesn't have an immediate impact on what their rent goes to. So it's kind of tiered in over a course of 3 years. The first 2 years, their rent stays the same regardless of what their job is. So it allows them to have more of their income going towards serving their family rather than going towards an increase in rent.
Thank you. Rashaki, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. I mimic Mr. Brown's sentiments. About you, Mr. Scott. You know your stuff. I listened to a few of the previous recordings just to try and bring myself a little bit up to speed for this meeting today. And you went through a slide deck in one of those, and it was very informative, but this was even better. So thank you. I have 2 questions. My first one was in relation to, it was in the beginning of your presentation where you talked about the tax credits. One was 9% and one was 4%. And I was wondering where or how the 4% was represented, because you said that you did not have to compete for that. And I was also wondering, like, what were the boundaries surrounding that credit? Like,
right,
it's not competitive, but what's the limit? Can you only have so many in a certain area, or yeah?
Right. So thank you for that question. So the 4% is pretty much when you see, take for example, Liberty and Main Street, where you see 5 phases and 2 of them were intended to be 9%. Mm-hmm. That's actually changed now, because there was a change in the law that made 4% tax credits more advantageous in some respects. But what I will say is that when you see 5 and 2 and 2 and then 1 and 5 and 2, those other phases are likely to have 4% in them because it's non-competitive. There isn't really a ceiling. Technically there is, but North Carolina has not reached it ever. We think that because of those changes in the law, it might become an issue down the road where it becomes more competitive. But right now, it is a source of funding that is not competitive. And as I said, the difference between a 9% and a 4% other than the competitiveness is essentially, in layman's terms, you get about half as much available money in your development deal.
Right.
But any of those phases you see that does not have 9% in it, more than likely, they're going to have a 4% component to it. The 9% tax credit in North Carolina is a bit restricted because, again, it's competitive. In order, the kind of sweet spot is around 80 or so units, maybe a little bit more. But with the 4%, you can do more units. And what that means is that you actually end up having more cost efficient savings because you're building more units all at once. So that's one of the advantages to the 4% program.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. My second question was getting a little more granular, like, again, Mr. Brown, in regards to, you mentioned on more than one occasion, the Medulla Terrace project, as well as, I think it was the Forest Hills, that you all work with the community and get feedback from the community. I was just wondering, I know you probably don't have a direct hand in that, but I was just wondering what that looks like, because I know, in communities like that, a lot of times, email and things of that nature are maybe not as prevalent as it is in some other communities. And so I was just wondering, how are you actually getting this feedback? Are there limitations, like you have to hear from 75% of the residents or anything? Where's the feedback coming from exactly?
Right. So what we do is we let residents know we're going to have a community meeting, and we pick a spot in that community. So with Medulla in particular, we did our meetings at TA Grady up until the point where it was vandalized. So now we're struggling around that. So we moved it to Burton Elementary School for our last meeting. Our turnout wasn't as good because, folks are a little further away. So we're going to try something a little different the next meeting. We're thinking about maybe putting a tent up and having people, put it right in the middle of the community somewhere so we can get people direct feedback. But in terms of the outreach that we do flyers. We use what's called Alert DHA. So we encourage all of our residents to sign up for that. And it's basically a text alert system. And it lets people know when a meeting is, and it reminds them. We usually do about 2 or 3 reminders as you get closer to the meeting, obviously including the day of. And we do flyers. Our resident services staff or some of our maintenance staff will go around and put flyers on people's doors and let them know. And the other part that's really important, particularly when you look at Medulla, because Ashley has a great social network, and so we ask Ashley, hey, do your Facebook Live thing, put the word out, let people know that we're having a meeting and when it is. So that's essentially the same process we do at each one of our communities, so that we can inform our residents about what's going on.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, Anthony. Are you able to send us the slideshow just so we have it if you want to look back over it, any of the members?
Absolutely. I can send you the link. It's obviously, it's got a lot of graphics, so it's pretty thick, but I'll send the link to Miss Juliet, and she will be able to forward it on to you guys.
Perfect. Thank you. And then we'll make sure people have your email if they need to reach out and have any other questions or want to follow up with you about anything. If that's
right.
all right.
It's at the end of the slide deck, so it's right there.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. So yeah, I'll make sure that goes out to everyone, or at least a link to it if it's too big to email, in case anyone wants to refer to it. Anthony's around at these meetings a lot. We always drag him back here every few months to keep us in the loop. So so you'll have plenty of chances to ask him questions in the future as well. but I don't want to eat up too much more time.
Great.
So thank
So
you
thank
again
you all.
for your
Hope
time.
it was helpful.
It was, as always. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Yeah, have a good one. The next thing, Mr. Johnson, did you still want to do your update today, or? Oh, you're muted.
No, I will not do my update today. I'll hold it for the next meeting. What I will share is that we will be sending out conflict of interest forms for all of the members. All of the members have to sign a conflict of interest form annually. And so that's new members as well as current members. And so Juliet will be sending that form out to everyone to re-sign for this year. And we do it on a fiscal year basis.
Perfect, thank you. In that case, then, I think the only last bit of business we have is approving the meeting schedule for the next year. It should be, I believe, it went out with the email with. Thank you, Councilwoman. Yeah, I believe it went out. Here it is on the screen. Thank you. So it should be, as always, it's generally the fourth Monday of the month. There are a few adjusted ones based around holidays and things like that. I think December is the only one. And so if everyone's cool with continuing with the fourth Monday of each month, I will accept the motion.
Is the plan, I know it says will be held virtually until otherwise notified, but is the plan to remain virtual for the foreseeable future?
I think in the short term, yes. I know we just got information today regarding kind of the lifting of, state emergency procedures and things like that. And so I'll probably be on the agenda for next meeting to talk about that as a committee, about whether or not we want to go back to in person or not. But for the foreseeable immediate future, I would say, yes, we'll still plan on virtual until as a committee we decide otherwise or get told to do otherwise.
Brian, I will say that we spoke about it at our last council meeting, and majority of us, I don't think we voted on it yet, but majority of us were saying that more people are coming to the meetings via Zoom because, it's just flexible. So I know I'm a component for keeping it Zoom, but we did discuss it, but we haven't voted on what's going to happen yet, but we did discuss it.
Yeah, and that's fair. I'm personally a fan of Zoom as well. I figure worst case, we might switch to, we'll have to update the bylaws or something to say the meeting meets virtually or something in case the bylaws say we have to meet in person.
Right, I think that's what the attorney was looking at when we discussed it. So I guess we'll be having an update, but we did discuss it at our last meeting.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I did send that out to you today from the city clerk's office regarding the committee members meetings.
You did
I sent it to thank you, Leah.
Yeah, we got it. Okay. All right, so with that in mind,
motion to approve.
I'll accept the motion. Any seconds?
Second.
Thank you. In that case, all those in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed, say nay. All right, so approved. That'll be the meeting schedule, fourth Monday of each month, except for December, we'll meet the third Monday. And on that, I guess there's no members of the public here to ask questions.
You do have 2 members in the guest list. Would you like me to bring them in? You have 2 attendees.
Yeah, sure.
All right, hold on. I'll promote them in.
Hello.
They've been promoted to panelists, but they're still staying there.
All right. Yeah, if there's any public questions, comments, happy to hear them, to answer questions. Not, I don't have any announcements. If any members of the panel have any announcements they'd like to share.
If I can so be honored, Mr. Chair, I just want to again welcome the new members. I want to encourage the new members to be feisty. We have prided ourselves over the last couple years within this committee to make sure that our meetings are engaging, that they're not meeting to be meeting, and that we expect our membership to be feisty and ask the pertinent questions when we do have guests. I don't want to speak for Brian, but Brian's been a major part of what the new committee has looked like over the last couple of years as the former vice chair. But we definitely want members to be engaged, present, because the work that we are doing, again, affects many people. And so I just want y'all to stay encouraged. Sometimes we will have long meetings. Sometimes we're going to have shorter meetings. But at the forefront, we want our body to be very much engaged, invested, and also feel like they have some say in what our meetings look like. So I just wanted to put that out there as someone who has been on this body maybe longer than most, or pretty much longer than anybody, and has served as someone who just gets tired of sitting in meetings to be sitting in meetings. So I know that Brian and Leah and Carl are all really great people that have the knowledge and have been here, and that we trust their guidance on how these meetings will move, and just be engaged and stay engaged. And of course, Mr. Johnson is the best. He's the GOAT when it comes to, we use that terminology a lot about the GOAT, but he truly is the GOAT of a human. He's a GOAT as a human being, but he's definitely a GOAT when it comes down to community development work. And so, just trust that they're going to lead us in the right direction. And the final point is, I got to get on Ms. Black, because she really claimed and stressed this temporarily part in her comments, and we don't want you to be temporarily, we want you to be permanent. So Mr. Johnson, I'm gonna need you to make that happen for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Leah, do you have something you want to share?
Yeah, just really quick. I also sent out a roster that Ms. Black so kindly compiled for us of member contact information. If you have any updates to that, you can just send it to me and I'll keep it kind of as a living document. So, contact information as far as email, phone number, if you move, like my address on there was not right. So I did correct that. But yeah, please do let me know.
Thank you. And lastly, Robert, I see your hands up. Did you have anything you wanted to share?
No, I just didn't take it down, but it's
all right. No worries. No worries.
Have a good night.
Juliet?
Yes, Leah, if there's any corrections to the roster, it also needs to be shared with the clerk's office. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, once again, thank you everyone for being here. Taking part in this. It's great. A lot of people sit home instead of coming to these things. And so I always appreciate everyone being active and engaged, and everyone kind of, taking an active part in the community. So I appreciate you all. And I hope you have a good week, good month, I guess it will be, until I see you all again. And on that, I always forget if I need a motion to end the meeting or if I can just end it. I always forget.
You need a motion.
All right. In that case, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
And seconded. In that case, have a good month, everyone. Thank you, and see you next month.
Thank you.
Good job, Brian.